Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be ranking my top 10 Metroid games. I'm not going to be cute about it, let's just do it. So if you're familiar with the series, you know there's only like 14 of these, so you might be wondering why I haven't just ranked like the other 4. It's because I haven't played them. That's not entirely true. I've played Metroid 1, I've played Prime Pinball. Prime Pinball isn't even a fucking Metroid game. And Metroid 1, I haven't beat it, but I've played enough of it to know it's my least favorite. So I guess this is my top 11 Metroid games. And then Hunters and Other M I just haven't played. Other M I think I'd like to keep it that way, and Hunters eventually. But with that out of the way, grab yourself a snack and a fucking go-go squeeze, because...
Here we go!
What do you think the worst Metroid game is? Yeah. Okay, it's not a bad game. I think it's like way overhated. It isn't really Metroid Prime at all. It plays more like an Xbox 360 4-player shooter, like Borderlands or Gears of War. Is Gears of War 4-player? Like, there's some really light puzzles in here that are kind of Metroid-y, but on the whole, most of what you're doing is just kind of walking and standing on switches and shooting stuff. I mean, it's just kind of like the worst parts of a Metroid Prime game, and none of the best parts. Still, I mean, that said, this is my next level, the Luigi's Mansion, guys, so it does look really good for 3DS. It runs really well, just technically really sound. I mean, as far as multiplayer stuff goes in the 3DS, I would say this is pretty much the most impressive thing out there. The controls are really solid, the environments they're not terrible. I mean, they're not impressive, but they're good for a 3DS game. It kind of just falls apart whenever you try to look at it as a Metroid game, though, because, I mean, there's almost nothing in the way of immersion. The music sucks. There's, like, virtually no exploration in the entire game. The entire thing is just kind of built of hallways. That's it, actually. There's no story, there's nothing to pick up, there's no, like, 100% to it, unless you count replaying levels over and over again on different difficulties. It's just kind of okay. I think a lot of reviewers tend to give this really high or really low scores. Like, some people swear that this game is like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Don't listen to them. It's like a 6. Number 9, I'm gonna go with Metroid 2 on the Game Boy. This game I actually think is really underrated. Not so much as a Metroid game, but as a Game Boy game. Whenever people list off Game Boy games that are still playable in modern times, I feel like they always just say Mario Land 2 and Pokemon, but I feel like this game is like really high up on that list. Obviously, it isn't Super Metroid. It's not like, if you come from Metroid Dread to this, you're gonna be hurting. There's no map in this game. There's also not a ton of the way of collectibles. It's actually kind of hard not to 100% it, which is kind of crazy. The map itself, though, like the design of the game is, I would almost say, closer to Super Metroid than Metroid 1 in a lot of ways. Like, you can tell they're starting to figure out the whole Metroidvania part of it, you know? The enemies are a lot more interesting in this game. This game has like 30 boss fights, kind of. The whole gimmick is that you're trying to hunt down these Metroids, and it's just kind of a chill game, because you can beat it in, I think, maybe just an hour or two. If there's one game I think people watching this video should just go and play, it's Metroid 2. It's really easy, it's really short, and it's just kind of barely worth your time. The music in this game is kind of insane. It sounds normal sometimes. Like, listen to this song. This just sounds like Metroid 1. Right, and then you hear the boss themes. I mean, it's kind of fucked, but you can't help but respect it. But yeah, I mean, this one, it's way more Metroid than Prime Federation Force, but like the objective quality of the game is so much worse, I can't help but still give it around a 6, maybe 6.5. For number 8, I'm gonna really upset people. Metroid Fusion. So Metroid Fusion is a really weird game for like so many reasons. Metroid Fusion was the first 2D Metroid in like forever. The last one was Super Metroid, which I think was like 1992 or 3 or something. So this game was like a decade later. It came out on the same day as Metroid Prime, for reference, which, if you know how Metroid Prime looks, that's insane. It just does a lot different. It's a lot more linear, there's a bigger focus on story, they kind of dive into Samus's character, which is just virtually non-existent prior to this. It even tries to do a little bit of a horror thing with the SAX. It doesn't like fully commit to this. Most of the time it just kind of feels like Metroid, but every now and then you get these chase sequences with the SAX that are really, really memorable. Those are probably the best parts of the game. Where I think it kind of falls below a lot of the other bigger 2D Metroid games is just in exploration. It's really linear, it's split into these sectors that they don't intertwine very often. And what's odd is that the game gives you little tastes of this. There are parts where you go between the sectors, you're going through the walls later in the game, and it's really exciting and liberating. but those moments are really fleeting. I mean, it's got other nice things to it. The visuals are absolutely incredible. I'd argue this is, in terms of sprite work, one of the best looking 2D games ever. The music is okay. I mean, it's the GBA sound chip. You've at least got a few classic Metroid tracks in here and a couple original ones that are somewhat memorable. I don't know, it's still a good game. I just think a lot of people give this best 2D Metroid status, and I could not disagree more. It's like 7.5. Okay, so huge jump here. I'm gonna go for number 7, Metroid Zero Mission. So this game came out super soon after Fusion. It's actually a remake of Metroid 1, but honestly, you'd never know it. Zero Mission kind of plays like a half step between Fusion and Super Metroid. It's got more of the exploration of Super Metroid, but it has a friendlier feel to it like Fusion did. It's very accessible. You can run through this one super fast as well. I think it's only a handful of hours long, and a lot of that is in this newly added epilogue, which wasn't even part of Metroid 1. In terms of being a remake, it's pretty much as good as it gets. I mean, there's a reason people hold this up there with Resident Evil 1 Remake. It's incredible. I would say it loses the identity of Metroid 1 a little bit, in terms of that feeling of just the world hates me. It's kind of I'd almost call it a cozy game in some ways. But it's so much more fun, and there are so many more collectibles and mechanics and items that it's fine. I would call Zero Mission the most bog standard Metroid experience. If you want to get a crash course on what a Metroid game is like, learn all the characters, what kind of environments and music are in these games, this is the one. But still, given that it doesn't have a lot that sets it apart, so I'm kind of limited in how much I can say this is my favorite. I will say this, some of the collectibles in this game are nuts. If you've ever seen the Shine Spark puzzles that they have in Zero Mission for 100%, it's bonkers. So yeah, it's just a really solid game, if not the most memorable. I'd give it 8.5. Alright, next up at number 6, I debated between this one and Zero Mission a lot, but I went ahead and put Samus Returns from 2017. So this was Mercury Steam's first Metroid before Dread, and you can tell. Technically, it is a remake of Metroid 2, but if you've played Metroid 2 in the Game Boy, you're not going to recognize very much that isn't just thematic. Even the music is just completely unrecognizable. I can appreciate that, though. I mean, I'm glad they remade Metroid 2, because even if I think it holds up perfectly fine, I know there are plenty of people who see the game as black and white and will never touch it. And as far as remakes go, I would say it's a lot more flawed than Zero Mission, You lose more of what made Metroid 2 so great, that pick-up-and-play feeling of, let me get a couple of these Metroids, I'll come back in 15 minutes and play the other half of the game. Samus Returns is a really big game, which is not at all the identity of Metroid 2. There are loads of bosses and items and mechanics that just weren't in the original game whatsoever, which, again, has its merits. I mean, it's really fun. This is one of the most fun 2D Metroid games to just blaze through. Like Zero Mission, there's not a lot that sets it apart, aside from that new counter move, which admittedly is a little overused, even if I think that complaint is also overused. And then you get the Ion abilities, which are kind of like these little cheat codes that let you scan the environment and things like that. They feel so much more fleshed out in Dread that here they just fall a little flat in retrospect, which is true of most of this game, I think. I think if you played it at launch, there was a much stronger consensus on this game that it was up there for 2D Metroid. These days, I think it's just middle of the pack. Even the music kind of falls in that weird gray area for Metroid where there's not enough remixes, but then the original music is just kind of eh. It's very similar to Fusion in that regard. So for Samus Returns, I'd give it around an 8.5, similar to Zero Mission. Lower lows and higher highs, but probably still the better product overall. Number 5, this one was really close as well, actually. I went with Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. This game is weird for so many reasons. It was the end of a trilogy, and it really feels like it. You can tell that the developers at Retro wanted this to feel like a lot of blockbuster games that were coming out around this time on other platforms. There's a bigger focus on story and scope and character. There's actual dialogue between characters in this game, which is really bizarre. There's a focus more on the world of Metroid and the Galactic Federation, which I actually really enjoyed. I wish Metroid games would lean into this more. It was also the first Metroid game to utilize motion control, which, I mean, if you've played the Prime games on the Wii, it's just sublime. It's absolutely perfect. And I would actually argue that Prime 3's more superfluous uses of motion control are still really good. There's a really visceral feeling about ripping off a shield from enemies or pulling down a lever and twisting it. It almost feels like playing a VR game sometimes. It's very immersive. The visuals in this game are fantastic too. I wouldn't say they're a gigantic leap from a lot of Prime 1 and 2's environments, but you can tell that there's just a lot more environmental detail in this game. Everything just feels really dense and intricate. I mean, the environments as a whole in this game are just incredible. I mean, you think of Skytown, which is just one of the most iconic locations in any Metroid game out there. There's a big focus on the gunship in this game, which is pretty interesting. I know they plan to make this more of an open world thing, and the final product just ends up being a few different planets you access via a menu. Even still though, the scope ends up feeling a lot bigger than the past two Prime games. Where it kind of falls apart though, is when it tries to be a really good Metroid game, which I wouldn't say it fails at, but it's just very obviously worse than the prior two Prime games at this. Because you had these more diverse environments, unfortunately each of them tends to feel a lot smaller and divided. Areas don't connect in as much of a natural way as they used to, so you end up just feeling less like, I have to chart a path, and more, okay, I have to be there. It kind of takes away a lot of that feeling of exploration that you felt in Prime 1 and 2. This game also just has a lot of little quirks, like one of the gimmicks is Hyper Mode, which allows you to get this just ridiculously powerful beam at any time by using up some energy. The thing is, it's just not nearly punishing enough for how strong it is. I mean, you can just absolutely blow through almost anything in this game with virtually no punishment. I mean, it's been talked to death how unbalanced this thing is, but I wouldn't say it detracts from the game severely, it just kind of gets rid of combat a lot of the time. A very, opposite approach to Federation Force. And then you've got stuff like the battery fetch quest at the end, which all the other Prime games have similar mechanics, and I can appreciate that they tried to do something different with this one. Instead of having to get every one of these MacGuffins, you just have to get some of them, and the more you get, the more extra unlockables you can find in the game's kind of equivalent of a hub world. It's a lot less overwhelming, but it also just feels a lot less focused and a bit messier. Really though, the game does pull it together at the end. The ending is just fantastic. The boss fight, the environment. It did a really good job of retroactively making the first two games feel really important in some big story that they weren't really a part of. But yeah, Prime 3, definitely one of the messier ones, but I just can't help but love it. I love Metroid Prime. So I'd give it about an 8.5. Alright, number 4, probably going to upset some people, but I'm going to go with Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread is a really interesting game because it is just absolutely fantastic beginning to end. The whole thing is ludicrously fun to play, super polished. I would argue this might be the most replayable Metroid game, short of maybe Super Metroid. It takes just about everything they got right with Samus Returns and does it twice as well. The controls are pretty much the best I've seen in any game ever. Playing this game is just so fun even when you're doing nothing. A lot of the items and upgrades as well are just really unique and interesting, but they've got a great balance of some of the more fun ones from prior games. I mean, this game just does a lot different. I mean, you get the Morph Ball so late in this game that they actually make it feel exciting once you've earned it. And then you've got the Dread aspect of it. The mythos of Metroid Dread was built up so much in the, decade prior to its announcement that I think they did an incredible job living up to that name. Well, the enemies don't actually take up that much of the game's playtime, they just make such a strong impression. I think this is also just the most fun Metroid to 100%. This game has some of the best Shine Spark puzzles because the controls make them fun to keep trying over and over again, but they're still challenging like the best ones in Fusion and Zero Mission. And the story is just incredible. I think Prime 3 tried a little too hard to make Metroid feel like a saga, whereas Dread is just a fantastic self-contained story. It still makes itself relevant to past games in interesting ways, but it's more interested in introducing this really cool villain in the form of Ravenbeak. And speaking of Ravenbeak, the bosses in this game are just fantastic. I'd say they're very easily the best in the series. It almost feels like it's pulling from the Metroidvania genre that emerged after Fusion, with a lot of these Souls-like elements, these very trial-and-error difficult games like Hollow Knight. Where I think the game falls a little flat, interestingly enough, is in the more traditional Metroid aspects. The game as a whole just feels a little too divided. A lot like Fusion, that's built into these different sectors that don't really connect in any natural way. It's all just teleportals and elevators. Which, given, is true of a lot of other Metroid games like Metroid Prime, but I mean, just if you look at some of where these teleporters are placed, it looks like it's done with a level editor. Weirdly enough, the music in this game is also just painfully mediocre. It's got a noticeable lack of classic Metroid remixes, and the original stuff is just nothing. Overall, it's just a fantastic game. I can't wait to see what Mercury Steam is doing next. I really hope they're doing something next. But I give Dread somewhere in the area of a 9. Alright, all of my top 3 I would consider 10 out of 10 fantastic games, but for number 3 I have to go with Super Metroid. Games do not get any more iconic than Super Metroid. I mean, Super Metroid's soundtrack may as well be the soundtrack of the entire franchise at this point. The visuals are absolutely insane for Super Nintendo. It has a level of immersion that's just completely unparalleled. The rain and lightning when you first step foot on the surface of the planet are just unbelievable for the time. I think this game just strikes the best balance of being really fun and really atmospheric. More than any other game in the series, it just feels like you're dropped into an alien planet, not told what to do, you just go explore and figure it out. And a lot like Super Mario 64, it's just unbelievable how much they got right on the first try. Okay, it's the third game in the series, but just the way the game subtly guides you to the next objective, which items to use where, and it's just incredible. I think Super Metroid is more essential as a video game fan than most Mario games. The game is just so cinematic, you know, going from Metroid 1 to Super Metroid feels like going from Earthbound to Mother 3. Tonally way off, but better. There are so many distinct environments in this game. Like, I think the most memorable for me is the wrecked ship just right where you start. Walking into this place, it feels so real. It really does feel like you're playing the movie Alien, you know? And I mean, listen, the game is not perfect. It does have a couple little gripes. Easily the biggest problem with this game are the controls. They're not terrible, but they're pretty close. The whole thing just feels way too slow and floaty. Swapping missiles and aiming, it's just kind of a mess. Given there are plenty of ROM hacks that fix a lot of these issues, but I'm not ranking Super Metroid the ROM hack. The map can be kind of undetailed and clunky. I mean, at least there is one this time. And then there's a couple weird things with 100%, like having to double back into the first Ridley boss fight, or else you permanently get locked out of the true ending. It's just kind of bizarre. And then the storytelling, you know, a lot of people like to say that the end of Super Metroid is, it's a masterclass and show don't tell, you know, it's not like Sonic 3's story, where no dialogue is spoken, but you still kind of know what's going on. But Sonic 3 doesn't have that good of a story. It's just kind of alright. It's memorable, it's iconic, but let's not pretend Dread didn't obliterate this thing, alright? But Super Metroid, I mean, aside from those just handful of nitpicks, this game's pretty much perfect. 10 out of 10. Now, this is the placement that I think is going to be most different from everybody else's list. I'm going to put Metroid Prime 2 at the number 2 spot. Now, in all fairness, I think this game is definitely a lot more flawed than Super Metroid. I can really appreciate the higher difficulty of this game, but at some points it can just feel uninviting. I think a lot of people stop after Prime 1 and don't touch the sequels, and I think a big part of that is that they haven't remastered it. But also because this game just feels really intimidating. It's really dark and moody and challenging. And punishing. I mean, you spend half of this game in just murky, nasty, dark environments. But that's what makes it so good, man. This is like one of the best direct sequels to any video game ever. It takes everything that Metroid Prime 1 got right, the exploration, the atmosphere, the music, and it's as good, if not better. Even when it comes down to stuff like story, I think Prime 2 just edges out the first game a little bit. You've got a really cool villain in Dark Samus, the Luminoth are finally not the Chozo. And even the Mirror World, which, I mean, given Nintendo does this a lot, I think like half of the Zelda games have tried to do this mechanic, but I think Prime 2 does it best. Stepping into these dark areas, it's just miserable. You really dread doing it. You're constantly taking damage whenever you're walking around. Enemies are harder to kill and more abundant. You've got limited ammo. I can understand on paper why all of that would sound absolutely awful, but it's a lot like Dark Souls, and where the difficulty and punishing nature of it are what make it so rewarding. This game just really respects the player to deal with it, which is something that I think Metroid does better than pretty much every other Nintendo franchise. It's also just cool as shit. I mean, have you listened to the title theme? It's insane. But yeah, I mean, this game is better than Metroid Prime 1. I can honestly say that. It's just that the flaws in it are harder to ignore. It's got this weird multiplayer mode, which mind you is kind of fun, but it's just, why is it here? And then every now and then, it's just a little too harsh. It makes you want to stop playing. Particularly the MacGuffin quest at the end of this game is just easily the worst one in any Metroid game. You've got to go around the entire map, and each of these collectibles is invisible, the hints suck. It's just kind of awful. It brings down the game so much, and at the very end, it's just a bummer, dude. But if you can get through that, this game is just absolutely incredible. 10 out of 10. People need to play this game. But obviously, the best one is Metroid Prime. I would say this game actually kind of is perfect, especially if you're playing the remaster, or even the Wii version for that matter. The controls are just perfect, which I consider the biggest flaw with the original game. Really, what Metroid Prime is a 3D remake of Super Metroid. It doesn't bring a lot to the franchise in terms of original mechanics per se, but the way the game is played is so different that it's just perfect. This game technically is amazing. The way that it runs on a GameCube, on a Wii, and on a Switch, all three of those systems, it pushes. It uses so many neat little graphical tricks and things. Go listen to the interviews on Kiwi Talks about this game, it'll blow your mind. But way beyond that, it's just so creative. The environmental art in this game is unbelievable. It's, I would say, one of the most immersive video games ever made. I mean, even things as simple as the morph ball, you know, taking that from Super Metroid, which is pressing down on the D-pad twice and changing your height by 1. It's just, the way they've reinvented it in this game is perfect. Switching to a third-person camera, making it feel heavy, and the subtle kind of wavering as you start building speed and you become more stable. It just, everything feels so real in this game. Unlike Dread and Fusion and even Prime 3, which I think lost the plot a little bit of what makes a Metroid game feel like a Metroid game, this game completely nails every aspect. The world feels interconnected in really natural ways. The music is full of just great remixes of Super Metroid and Metroid songs, but moreover, incredible original stuff. And you know, the few like truly new ideas that it brings to the table are just permanent, perfect, natural additions. I mean, scans are one of the smartest collectibles ever in a 3D game. And, you know, this game was made at a time where Metroidvania was barely a genre. I mean, there were maybe 2 or 3 games that had set the precedent for this, and they perfectly transitioned it into 3D. And it's like this was even the Metroid team. These guys made Turok 2. But yeah, I mean, every single criteria that can make a Metroid game good is a 10 here. Exploration, atmosphere, environment, controls on the Wii version. Even the fetch quest at the end is actually really fun. The hints are solid, the world is just big enough and easy enough to navigate that it doesn't really feel frustrating to go find them. I'd say the lowest point of this game is probably just the final boss and the threat itself being a Metroid Prime, but it's recontextualized so well in Prime 2 and 3 that I still can't help but love it. But yeah, that's going to do it. Feel free to let me know in the comments what your favorite Metroid game is, and if the answer is Metroid Dread, you're wrong.